The Automagic Horse by L. Ron Hubbard, Part 2. Stardust, having successfully broken down 6 doors without having sustained any injury, left the western set north of San Fernando in a shocking state of disrepair, and on Wednesday the shooting of the picture started on schedule. At 7 o'clock in the morning, everybody bundled up and went out to the location at Gray's Ranch. Gadget looked over the scene of action. A big, flimsy barn had been built. The roof beam was sawed half through, and when the building burned, that roof would come down, but quick. Wires and pulleys would assist the cave-in of the roof, and mounds of hay containing flares were piled all about. The property man was giving the hay a final sloshing with smudge solution. There had to be a lot of smoke. The stunt man went over to the place to make sure there was nothing to trip over. He was a devil-may-care young man to all appearances, but in common with all good stuntmen, the largest part of his daredeviltry consisted in the minuteness with which he planned the staging of his scenes. The stuntman spent a few moments with Gadget going over the details of the shot. Veronica Morris and Peter Butler were there eating a belated breakfast in the shade of Butler's dressing room trailer. Marty Fitzgibbons was regaling them with an English music hall anecdote.
Hello, Gadget.
Mr. Butler called out.
That's Gadget O'Dowd over there.
He told Miss Morris. Where? Oh, hello, Mr. O'Dowd. I hope you fixed it so that poor stuntman won't get hurt. I'd feel pretty dreadful if anything happened to him for my sake.
He'll make it right.
Let's see it.
Now, folks,
said the director.
Now, there's no hurry about this. Morning, Miss Morris. I'll have a cup of that coffee if you don't mind. Well, I see you got the horse here all right, Gadget.
I want to see that thing in action. I almost died laughing over that mechanical monkey Gadget built for the last Tarzan picture.
Oh, I remember that. He was certainly a wonderful animal. Where is it now, Mr. O'Dowd? I don't suppose you could be persuaded to part with it?
The last I saw of it, it was jumping up and down on Jackie Brockner's front lawn. When the accountancy department gets through with me, I suppose it'll be lying on some scrap metal heap in some local junkyard.
A cameraman came up with an assistant director.
We got 3 cameras on it, sir.
Well, make sure you get it the first time. That barn will only burn once.
I suppose that's my cue.
I've got to see this,
said Mr. Butler. He picked up his bad man's hat and followed O'Dowd over toward the horse trailer. Angus was ready with the control box, and Tony let down the back gate. Stardust stopped being immobile and began to champ and whinny. She backed down the ramp, turned, pricked up her ears, and at Gadget's tip-off wink to Angus, Stardust came nuzzling up to Veronica Morris for a piece of sugar. Why, it's a real horse.
Not if you put your ear up to it.
Why, that's Stardust that won the sweepstakes.
The director took one look and turned to the script girl. They put their heads together for a moment, and the director came up.
It won't do. 2 scenes further along that we've already shot have a sorrel without any forehead blaze.
Sorry. They didn't give me a script. Angus, hand that box of paint down here.
In a very short space of time, watercolor had remedied the situation handsomely, and the script girl was satisfied. The property man came over and saddled Stardust with the proper riding equipment. The stuntman gave his mount wide-eyed admiration.
Mind if I try a couple tests on it?
He said. He mounted up. Gadget made the horse prance, cavort, and strike with its front feet. Finally, he put Stardust into a dashing run.
Well, for once,
said the cameraman,
we won't have to speed the film up on that one. That hunk of junk can really get out of here.
The director gave the order for
laces.
The front doors to the barn were securely barred on the stuntman. Gadget took up his station just off scene. He had his control box all adjusted and tuned.
Camera. Action.
An expert archer sent a blazing arrow across the scene into an explosive-loaded hay pile at the front of the barn. A second firebrand followed it, sticking in the side wall. A third thunked solidly into the shingles, and in a moment the dry, explosive-impregnated material flared and yellow fire curled greedily across the structure. More hay piles caught. The flames were beginning to crackle and roar. Gadget waited until the entire front of the building was blazing. Then, with an urgent wave from the assistant director, he set Stardust in motion. The roof was already beginning to sway. The temperature in the barn must have mounted to about 130 degrees. Stardust began to plunge and rear. Then it dashed forward, flung up its hoofs, and brought them down solidly against the doors. The doors caved. The assistant director's men gave a yank, and the roof started down. Out came Stardust, narrowly missed by 2 blazing beams, nearly swallowed in clouds of white smoke and billows of yellow fire. The stuntman, dressed in ladies' riding garb, was leaning on the neck and holding on in earnest. Stardust plunged and fled off down the road at a fast run. Arrows and crossbow bolts thunked in her wake. She vanished far up the lane. The director called,
"Break!"
Next followed 3 shots, done on another set, of the now somewhat singed Stardust plunging and rearing in a mock interior. She had to break down a burning door in here, too. At 11 o'clock, the work was finished. And mounted on a real horse, Veronica Morris was ready to follow through with the close-ups. Mr. Butler was due to perish tomorrow, so today he could look on. Gadget, having lunched with the director and chief cameraman, receiving praise all around for his remarkable horse, was now free to return to his laboratory and do what he considered more important work. As Gadget and Tony were backing Stardust up to the horse trailer, they had one slight encounter with the SPCA representative who wanted to examine the
injuries sustained by the horse in that last scene.
In the end, the man, who turned out to be quite a nice fellow after all, was their most appreciative audience. He just couldn't get over it. They let him examine a couple of the bolts down the throat and unscrew a couple of teeth.
You are a genius, my boy. You're a genius. You must have proper recognition. Why, there are museums all over the country.
Oh, no. I couldn't do it again. It was a fluke.
They finally escaped from the terrible prospect of the very unprofitable proper recognition as the man walked away.
That was a narrow one. If we ever got recognition, we wouldn't make enough to fly to Canada, much less the moon.
They loaded the scorched Stardust into the trailer and they wheeled on home. Miss Franklin was waiting for them. She had gripped in her hand a green slip of paper, which she had obviously been holding half of the morning in anticipation of their return. Gadget took one look at it and knew what it was. The $2,520 kickback from the Racing Museum, $2,800 minus 10%.
Now don't tell me this is a personal debt. The boy told me he was to give it only to Gadget O'Dowd.
Then how did you get it?
Tony looked mournfully at a torn-up flower bed.
Boss, she can wrestle too.
That skin the Racing Museum gave your mechanic can go right back to them. It will cost me a whole lot less than $2,800 to have it restuffed. It looks to me, Mr. O'Dowd, like you didn't need any such budget. This makes you exactly $2,520 under your estimate.
Gadget looked at her and sighed deeply. He went into his own office and slammed the door. The following morning, bright and early, Cliff's trainer, Hank, drove up with a horse trailer, which made the rental job look like something off a salvage pile. His men opened the door of this glittering creation invitingly. Hank went into the office to find Mr. O'Dowd. Fortunately, Miss Franklin considered her office hours to be from 9 to 5. Movie people are ordinarily up long before that.
Well, here I am.
Well. I see you are.
Now, shall we load the horses aboard now?
Well, you see, I've been thinking this over rather carefully, and well, I decided
Yeah,
that,
you're not going to back out on the deal now.
well, I was thinking that,
Mr. O'Dowd, you look to me like a man of your word. You wouldn't go back on Mr. Neary, would you? He could do you a lot of good.
That isn't all he could do to him.
Gadget was thinking fast. If he confessed this sin, he would certainly have to refund Cliff's losses. But if he didn't, then he would have to give Cliff the horse. Due to his disturbed state of mind because of the $2,520 hole in the budget, he had not come up with a brilliant idea of which he thought himself capable.
Where is the horse? She's all right, isn't she?
Gadget was about to report the theft of Stardust when one of the men spotted her in the bar.
Funny place to keep a horse. I hope she doesn't drink. Well, shall we load up?
She looks kind of singed.
Said one of the men.
What happened?
nothing serious. Nothing serious at all.
Funny look about that horse,
Said the other man.
Well, she's just a little bit off her feed today. All that running didn't help her any. Tony, we're being very remiss in our hospitality. Take these gentlemen inside and give them something to eat or drink.
I got a fresh cup of coffee if you want some.
You go ahead too, Hank. I'll put her in the trailer.
Tony hustled them inside, and Gadget loaded Stardust on board the super deluxe horse trailer. When they came out again, Hank saw Stardust's ears above the trailer's side, handed Gadget the check from Mr. Neary, and they agreed to sign all the necessary papers on Saturday morning. Hands were shaken all around, and soon the yard was deserted. 10 seconds later, Miss Franklin drove on the scene.
What was that horse trailer?
The smile, which Gadget had worn at the departure, now vanished.
Well, you see, that Stardust...
You mean you've let somebody else have a piece of property belonging to United Pictures? You must realize that there is a lot of valuable equipment in there that could be salvaged. You've already exceeded your
You mean to
budget.
say that we've got to go to all the toil of taking that horse apart?
Said Angus, coming belatedly to work.
I mean just that. We'll restore that hide to the museum and put all the various parts on the inventory.
She went into her office and could be heard arranging things for her day. Gadget looked at Angus.
Bring the control box out.
Angus was in no mood to be lightly ordered about, but he went.
Dismantling a horse, filing parts, inventory. What the movie business is not coming to would... What in the saintly name has happened to this control box?
He came back out, his basic anger building.
Mr. O'Dowd, some Scot has unsoldered
Give it here. Give it here. I was in a hurry. I didn't know when they'd look at me. Give me that box.
Miss Franklin, curious as to what was going on out in the court, issued from her office aggressive as an overdue bill.
What are you doing? When the front office learns...
Suddenly, a roaring whine resounded in the sky. Looking up, a terrified Miss Franklin beheld a horse. It had been rising ever since the trailer had begun to move, having issued straight up, and now it had a very, very long way to come down. Miss Franklin screamed. Stardust was falling faster now, falling with the gathering speed of a blockbuster, falling so fast that the air was split and scorched. Down came Stardust from its suspended station. Down came Stardust, getting bigger and bigger, louder and louder. Down came Stardust with a crash. Dust shot away. Hoofs and hide contracted, seemed buried in the earth, and then bounced with a geyser of wheels, cogs, tubes, rheostats, and useless condensers mingled with spattering, twisted pieces of torn hide. The dust settled, slowly, quietly, and much of it upon a cowering Miss Franklin, whose disarrayed nerves were almost as damaged as the late and unlamented Automagic horse.
Gravity repulsor. Installed it at the last minute in a streak of proud genius. Works fine, doesn't it, Angus?
He looked good-naturedly at Miss Franklin.
Gravity repulsor. Installed to conduct a scientific experiment in the interest of future safety of stuntmen. Solder seems to have broken so that I couldn't slow it down.
What happened?
Why, in the interest of picture research, we installed a gravity repulsor which lifted Stardust out of the trailer and deposited her here, back where she belongs. And I think you will find that this experiment cost exactly $2,520 to conduct, including the cost of the gravity repulsor unit, of course.
He looked brightly at the scattered remains which were strewn widely across the flower beds. Miss Franklin gulped, looked at Gadget with baffled but dawning respect, and then took her tired way into her office.
Laddie, 'tis a great project that we're embarked. But I'm thinking if you keep this up, you'll find it necessary to go to the moon. Aye, and a devil of a lot further before we're done.
Boss, that sure was a bang-up solution to that problem.
Gadget reached into his jacket pocket and brought out the purchase checks which Mr. Neary had given him for the sale of Stardust. He handed them to Tony.
This hurts me more than I can say. But one must be honest after all. Take them over to Mr. Neary and tell him how sorry we are that his new horse ran away. Tell him it was a bad habit she had anyway.
Give him back his 50 G's?
Oh, my boy. You've evidently forgotten how much money we made off of him in the bets. My conscience wouldn't permit me to keep his checks for a horse he never owned.
Your conscience is the most expensive thing we got.
He pulled on his gloves, took the money, and drove away. In the dark of night, another mile of tunnel to a gamma room was started into the Hollywood Hills, and enough metal for a spaceship's bow was smuggled the very next day straight under the vigilant nose of Miss Franklin. Gadget and Angus and Tony were that much closer to the moon.
I hope humanity appreciates the trouble we've gone to for it.
But there was so much noise around the busy forge that Angus and Tony didn't even hear him.